Okay, so in theory, this review should actually turn out to be a little bit of a quicker one, which is usually not that good of a sign, which is the case here today with the Nubia N1 Lite. And I'm not saying that's a bad product, but it's also not a particularly good one either. And I'm not trying to be mean here by no means, and I am already considering the budget phone price. And that's why I would say maybe Nubia should see this video kind of like constructive feedback and like a training video of how not to do it the next time. And that's why I actually want to maybe focus a little bit more towards the negative parts than the good things, because just as it is right now at the moment, I can't really recommend it. So that's why I would say let's go to the first thing, design. Actually, I like the front a lot, especially here with the gold trim. We also have a kind of curve here, at least it feels a little bit like that on the glass side, and the glass has some nice coating. But it's the back where things start to fall apart a bit, because the good thing here is, what made me actually quite interested in this device was the removable back. But what I expected, of course, was removable battery, but as you can see, not the case here because it's sealed. The good thing here is, yes, we have dual SIM card support with an SD card tray, but the problem on this removable back is that we have many tiny noses. And just after about 3 or 4 times taking it off, they didn't really properly close anymore, all because you will hear some clicking because I won't properly get it the first time, because some just align after a while. But even if I attach them all properly, and I really do my best to get it right, I have now, after done it a few times, a gap on the right side which makes it crack a little bit, and on the left side as well. So this just doesn't make the device feel as solid as it did after the first time, where it was quite fine, and then I had no problems actually because it felt quite good after all, even though maybe the back material isn't my favorite because it feels a little bit like a potato skin. But the noses definitely should have been improved, because if I get it to crackle after just a few days, I'm not quite so sure about the long-term use. Then there is the fingerprint reader, because on its own it actually reacts quite okay. It does maybe turn on super fast because of the screen, but it reacts quite reliable. But the problem is it is recessed, and you can't just usually put it on. You have to kind of press your finger in it properly. And in normal use, it was actually quite annoying how many times I had to do it a few more times to get it actually working. Because as you can see here, and you will see this throughout the review, I think a few times, that I won't get it quite right, but just because of the own weight of the device. Then we have the LEDs, the camera, and the microphone. On the top we have the headphone jack, left side is blank. On the bottom we have the microphone on the left, and maybe a little bit weirdly placed the micro USB. I don't have an issue that it's not USB Type-C, it's because for this price we can't expect that. Buttons are absolutely nice placed, easy to reach, and the feedback I would say is okay. A little bit click would have been nice, but they definitely don't feel cheap. We have also a notification LED, and as you can already see here, we have on-screen buttons. So in overall, I would have said if they would have just maybe fixed 2 things. First of all, not place the speaker on the back, but I will get to that later, and maybe make the whole nose thing a little bit more sturdy on the long term. This device actually would have got a way better rating from me in that regard. Otherwise, in terms of the display, 720p display with 5.5 inches. But what I like here is maybe it's not super sharp, and a few people could have an issue, even though I have to say in daily use experience it was actually quite nice, especially since the quality is quite good. Because if you, for example, use the user mode and set things up like contrast, saturation, picture brightness to your preferences, I gotta actually say I enjoyed this display for a budget display, because maximum brightness 450 lux, which is just about good enough for okay sunlight visibility. Viewing angles are okay for the most part. White and black in colors, as I said, can be adjusted to your liking, and then this display was actually quite nice, quite pleasant. Now, not that great though is the speaker. Yes, it just is backfiring, and not even a good one, because I think the last time I used the backfiring one was on the LG G4. But here the maximum volume isn't good enough, it sounds quite muffled and boring. You have to reflect to get some sort of sound out, and I would say it just about gets the sound done. It delivers what it has to do, but the experience isn't great, and I actually have a harder time even calling it decent. Headphone jack though is actually quite okay. So let's get into the performance. I can't really kill off all the apps because I don't see a kill off all app button. But as you can see, I didn't really launch many. So let's try a few ones. This one was already pre-launched, and as you can see here, it's not a snappy device. It definitely is not. And with 2 GB of RAM, of course, the multitasking won't be great either. But the problem for me is just, I would have been okay with a little bit of a slower device. But the problem is, as you can see here, even though this side is fully rendered, the scrolling is just not really smooth. And yes, I know this is a budget device and you can't really expect that much more. But I have used quite a lot of phones in this price range that did perform way smoother. As you can see here, it was quite sluggish, especially if you launch over the course of the whole day a few more apps. It will sometimes take 2 or 3 seconds to even launch the apps, because most of them already were preloaded this time, because I just didn't kill them off again. But I have to say, the experience is just not great. It's quite sluggish. It feels overall a little bit slow, so the experience is just not great. And in this price range, you can get better phones these days. I don't even want to go into the gaming performance because that one wasn't all that great either. So let's just jump ahead and go into the battery. Full charge takes quite long by these days, 3 hours. I know it's not a higher end phone and that's why it takes longer, but still 3 hours is a little bit long. Then 13% for an out YouTube. That's actually, I would say, average. But where it actually surprised me, or at least definitely did please me, was the battery life. Because on mobile data, about 5 to maybe even 5.5 hours, and on Wi-Fi 7 hours. So that's actually very good. And this is actually one of the highlights here of this device, besides maybe the display. The next thing, the software. Because what I have to kind of complain about is that we don't see the Nubia UI. Because what you get here is something that actually a lot of people will like a lot. As you can maybe see here, this is pretty much stock Android. There was no bloat installed. We get the typical launcher, we get the quick settings. It all looks and feels a lot like stock Android, because it pretty much is. We don't really get any extra options. Like I said, for example, for the display, you get something and a little bit of sound tweaking and so on. As you can see here, the sound enhancement, but not a whole lot. And that's why I would say it's pretty much stock Android. If you like that, you will actually be quite pleased, and it feels quite nicely optimized. It is though just running on Marshmallow, so not all that great, but overall, I personally liked Nubia's UI and I would have liked to see it, and just kind of not seeing this here shows that there wasn't a whole lot of commitment behind this device in the first place. So let's get into the camera. I have to actually say the selfies look quite good for a cheaper phone, because as you can see, mostly quite sharp, colors seem fine. It's not great, but it's definitely not bad either. But low light capabilities here, it is just not great. As you can see, quite grainy, quite slow. Autofocus did need some time. So yeah, this is not that great. Outside, what I actually kind of liked was the way the autofocus was behaving, because it was definitely not quite fast. Because every time it knows it has to autofocus, it just takes a second for that to get done, but it worked quite reliable. And I would say the outcome is actually good. Definitely decent for this price range. But there are better phones, especially imported phones will deliver you way much more. But if you just see this for the local market, I have to actually say the pics look quite good. So mostly all things fine here, but I won't really get into the video because I messed up those files, but definitely nothing to really speak of in the first place. So let's just jump into the pros and cons. Here I want to start off with the quite nice design. I just have to give it to that. I also liked the 720p display. Still, for this price range, not great, but it was pleasing. The battery life was actually also great. Pretty much stock Android for all those who love that. A good selfie cam and a decent photo cam. But let's get to the not that great stuff. The build quality, after all, as I said, especially due to the quite flimsy nose system of the back. Then the slightly annoying fingerprint reader. The weak backfiring speaker. Performance in general was just too sluggish, not really smooth, and definitely anything but fast. The slow charge. No Nubia UI, maybe not a problem for many, but I liked Nubia's UI, so I would have liked to have seen that. Low light cam wasn't all that great, and the video cam. So let's just sum this up. This device costs about 150 to 170, at least here in Europe, and okay, you get quite a lot of phone because you get a 5.5 inch with a quite nice display. It doesn't feel all that bad and the overall qualities are okay. But I just know a lot of other phones, maybe not 5.5 inches, but more like 5 inches that just deliver a better experience, especially since the performance was quite sluggish, which did put me off. And one thing that I have to kind of mention as well, which is not quite fair though, and I will have to point that out, is a phone like, for example, the Xiaomi Note 4X. because that one costs also about 170. But I know you also have to import it, and that's something completely different there. So you maybe won't get, but if you have to import anyways, for example, this phone is so much better. But just to stay on the local market, you can maybe get a Moto G5 or get an Honor 5C. Yes, you maybe won't get 5.5 inches, or even if you get, for example, an LG Stylus 2, you will get that price and you will just get overall better qualities. So I've pointed out all the not that great stuff that I would like to see maybe Nubia improve the next time, and I think they didn't just go all in this device. And yes, I kind of know you always have to make compromises if a phone isn't all that expensive and you want to kind of push a lot of phone for not a whole lot of money. But a little, let's say, a little too late, a little too light. And I got it wrong, but it doesn't really matter because I think you get to the main intention here. So, yeah, you know what to do. Thumbs up, maybe subscription and a comment, but this would have been it. Sorry to see that I am a little bit disappointed, especially after all the Nubia phones that I liked so much in the past. But I would say until next time.